My name is Margaret, and at 62, I've learned life can shift in a single fleeting moment. I was in a taxi, the vinyl seat creaking under me, its stale air thick with exhaust, heading to the airport with Harold's leather satchel clutched tight. His death 2 weeks ago left a raw, aching void. The Ohio sky bruised with clouds mirroring my sorrow. I rummaged for his will, my fingers catching on the satchel's frayed stitches, only to realize I'd left it on the kitchen counter. Panic surged sharp and cold. I told the driver to turn back, unease curling like smoke in my gut. What I'd hear at home would unravel everything. Where are you watching from? Like and subscribe to share stories of life's hidden truths. The taxi's tires crunched over gravel as we pulled into my driveway. The Ohio sky low and heavy with grey clouds. I'm Margaret, 62, and my house, its paint chipped and lawn choked with dandelions, felt foreign now stripped of Harold's presence. His absence lingered in the untrimmed hedges he'd pruned each spring, the porch swing still without his morning hums. I paid the driver coins, slipping through my trembling fingers. His impatient glance sharp in the rearview mirror. I slipped through the back door, its hinges whispering careful not to disturb Raymond and Judith staying with me temporarily. Their presence heavy, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I stepped into the kitchen, my shoes soft on the worn linoleum, the air thick with yesterday's coffee, and a faint trace of Harold's pipe tobacco. The will should be on the counter beside the old coffee pot he filled each dawn. But before I reached it, voices stopped me, low, sharp, spilling from the living room. Judith's tone cut through cold and certain. "She doesn't need all of it, Raymond. We deserve more." "You know we do." Her words landed like a fist, stealing my breath. My knees buckling slightly against the counter's edge, my chest tightened a stone, pressing my ribs. I leaned against the wall, its plaster cool under my palms, steadying my spinning mind. Raymond's voice came softer, hesitant, but not denying her. "I know, but it's tricky. She's still sharp. She'll notice if we push too hard." My throat burned dry as ash. My son, my only child, speaking of me like a problem to be solved. I'd bandaged his scrapes, read him bedtime stories, worked overtime for his school fees. And now this betrayal cut deeper than grief. A wound I hadn't expected. I reached for the counter, needing the will, but my fingers grazed a drawer. I pulled it open, desperate for something solid. Inside was a photo, creased and faded, of Raymond at 10, grinning beside Harold at a lake, their fishing poles glinting in the summer sun. My heart twisted, the memory sharp. Harold's deep laugh. Raymond's proud shout as he reeled in his first catch, the water sparkling around them. That boy was gone, replaced by this man, scheming with his wife. I clutched the photo, its corners biting my palm, their voices sinking deeper into my bones. Esther's knock jolted me, her face peering through the back door's smudged glass, her white hair catching the dim light. "Margaret, you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle but searching her eyes at 73 sharp with concern. She'd been my neighbor for decades, her check-ins constant since Harold's funeral. Her porch always lit like a beacon. You look pale. I forced a smile, my voice thin as paper. Just forgot something, Esther. I'll be fine. She frowned, mentioning she'd seen Judith sorting through Harold's papers in the study. Her hands quick and secretive, as if hiding something. My stomach knotted tighter, the photo heavy in my hand. I shut the door. Esther's kindness, a faint warmth against the chill inside. I found the will, its envelope crisp under my fingers, the weight of its purpose grounding me. But their voices sharpened Judith's impatience, slicing through. We can't wait forever, Raymond. That money's ours by right. I froze the will, heavy their words heavier, like stones piling on my chest. My son, the boy I'd rocked through fevers, was plotting to take what Harold left. The kitchen's silence closed in the linoleum cold under my feet, and I stood heart pounding, wondering how love could twist into something so cold and calculating. I stood in the kitchen, the will pressed to my chest, its edges sharp against my skin. The house was silent now. The living room voices hushed as if Raymond and Judith sensed their words had carried too far. I'm Margaret, 62, and I'd thought losing Harold was the deepest cut. But this, my son's betrayal, carved a new pain, raw and relentless. My legs felt leaden, but I couldn't move, their conversation looping in my mind, each word a splinter lodging deeper under my skin. I slid the will into my purse, my hands trembling, and sank into a chair at the kitchen table. Its surface worn from years of family suppers, the grain rough under my fingertips. The clock ticked above the sink each second, stretching the quiet, a relentless pulse. I tried to anchor myself to the familiar. The chipped mug Harold loved. Its blue glaze faded. The tablecloth's faint coffee stain from a morning we'd laughed too hard, but Judith's voice echoed cold and precise. If she fights us, we'll find a way to prove she's not fit to handle it. Raymond's murmur followed, not agreeing, but not stopping her. She's stubborn, Judith. You know how she is, stubborn. The word stung a betrayal sharper than a stranger's. I'd held our family together, forgiven Raymond's lies, like when he took money from our savings at 20, swearing it was a one-time mistake. I saw him then, small and scared, clinging to me during a storm, his trust absolute. Now at 62, I questioned every choice, my reflection in the window showing eyes hollowed by doubt. Had I missed the moment he drifted away? Was this my failure too, for loving too softly? My phone buzzed, jarring me. It was Lois, my sister, calling from Oregon. Her voice warm but distant across the miles, a lifeline I couldn't quite grasp. Margaret, you sound off. What's wrong? She asked, her concern threading through the static. I hesitated, the truth too heavy, like a stone in my throat. Just tired, I lied. My eyes tracing the table's grain, its swirls a map of lost years. She sighed, her voice softening. I know it's hard without Harold. Remember Mum's funeral? We got through that together. Her words stirred a memory of us barely 30, sorting through Mum's dresses. Our hands trembling, but united, the scent of her lavender perfume lingering. Now Lois was too far to hold me, her voice a faint echo. I hung up, the silence heavier, wrapping me like damp cloth. I pulled the will from my purse. Harold's handwriting bold across the envelope. For my family to keep us whole. My throat tightened, his faith in me, a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. He'd written it in his final weeks. His hands weak, but his heart clear, trusting me to protect our home, our savings, our legacy. But Raymond and Judith saw it as theirs to claim their voices drifting again softer from the living room. Judith mentioned a lawyer. Her tone clipped Raymond mumbling about timing. My pulse quickened, anger stirring beneath fear, a fire kindling in my chest. I wanted to confront them, demand truth, but my body stayed rooted, the will a shield I wasn't ready to wield. I stared at Harold's note, its promise fading against their scheming. My heart caught between love and a loss I couldn't name. That night I lay in bed, the house too vast, its silence pressing like a heavy hand against my chest. I'm Margaret, 62, and the darkness mirrored my thoughts, replaying Judith's sharp words. Raymond's weak agreement. My fingers traced the edge of Harold's old desk, now against my bedroom wall. Its wood cool and worn from years of his work. The grain smooth under my touch. Sleep wouldn't come, so I opened a drawer, pulling out a bundle of letters tied with faded string. Their edges soft from handling. Harold's handwriting, steady even in sickness, glowed under the lamp's dim light. Each word a fragment of him. I clung to a tether to the life we'd built. I untied the bundle, my hands shaking, and read the top letter dated last spring when Harold knew his days were few. Margaret, it began. I worry about Raymond. His ambition might pull him too far from us. My chest ached, his foresight cutting through my grief like a cold wind. He'd seen this rift coming, and I'd been blind, believing Raymond would become the man we raised. I'd poured years into him, late nights, checking homework, skipping dinners to save for his college, forgiving debts that left us scraping by. Now those sacrifices felt like stones sinking in deep water, their weight pulling me under. Another letter. Harold's pen, weaker, read, "You're stronger than you know, Margaret. Keep our family whole." I pressed the paper to my lips. Tears blurring the ink, tasting salt and sorrow. I saw us years ago balancing budgets in this room. Harold's hand steadying mine as we faced lean times, his quiet faith in me an anchor. His belief was a challenge now, one I feared I was failing. How could I hold us together when my son saw me as a hurdle to his plans? The phone rang, piercing the quiet. It was Beverly, my friend since girlhood, her voice bright with nostalgia, a contrast to the dark pressing in. Remember Harold's puns at the church picnic? She laughed, her voice warm with memory. He'd have a terrible one for this mess, wouldn't he? I tried to smile, but her warmth sharpened the cold inside, a reminder of Harold's humor that once knit us together. Now I faced this alone, my son, an adversary. "I'm fine, Beverly," I said, my voice thin as thread. She paused, her tone softening. "You don't sound fine. Call me tomorrow, okay?" Her concern lingered, a faint light in the dark, but it couldn't reach the ache within. I hung up the letters scattered across the quilt, their edges curling like autumn leaves. The house creaked downstairs, echoing my unease, the floorboards groaning under the weight of memory. I thought of Christmas when Raymond was 15, sulking, refusing our holiday table, his door locked against us. Harold had said he's finding himself. But that distance grew a canyon now unbridgeable. Judith's morning words, lawyers, my fitness to manage, burned in my mind, each syllable a spark to my rising anger. I paced the hardwood cold under my feet and noticed the desk's top drawer ajar. Inside was Harold's notebook filled with lists, groceries, repairs our retirement dreams. One page stopped me. Talk to Raymond about responsibility. Underlined the ink bold. My throat tightened, my fingers tracing the words. I'd softened those lessons, thinking love meant leniency. Now that love felt like a mistake, the pain cutting deeper with every heartbeat, a wound that refused to close. The morning sun barely reached the kitchen, where I stood gripping the counter's chipped edge. Harold's notebook open to his warning about Raymond. I'm Margaret, 62, and yesterday's discovery pressed harder. A bruise spreading under my skin, its ache relentless. Footsteps sounded upstairs. Then Judith's voice, sharp and low, seeped through the floorboards. Each word a needle. We need to move fast, Raymond. A lawyer can handle this quietly. She won't know until it's done. My stomach twisted her words, sinking deeper, slicing through the trust I'd clung to like a lifeline. I turned on the sink water, rushing to muffle their voices, but it didn't help the sound, a hollow roar in my ears. My reflection in the window showed tired eyes, lines etched by years of faith, now crumbling my face, a map of loss. Raymond's reply was faint, but I caught. She's not as frail as you think. Not frail, but not enough, it seemed. I'd given him everything, nights helping with math weekends, cheering at his games, money we scraped to cover his mistakes. Our savings dwindling with each promise he broke. Now those sacrifices felt like ashes scattered by his betrayal, leaving only dust in their wake. I ignored the phone's ring, likely Lois. Her voice too distant to ease this ache. I stepped into the living room, the air thick with tension, their voices now gone. On the coffee table lay Harold's old bills papers. Judith had been sorting their edges, curled like secrets kept too long. My fingers brushed a receipt from his last hospital stay. The date stark 3 months ago. The ink smudged from handling. I saw him pale but smiling, his hand weak in mine, saying, "You'll be okay, Margaret." I wasn't okay, not with my son plotting against me. His loyalty traded for gain. Connie burst through the front door, her school bag swinging, her voice bright as sunlight. "Grandma, look at my drawing," she said, holding up a sketch of a house with bright flowers, their colours vivid against the paper's white. Her joy was a jolt, a reminder of what I fought for, but it stung. She didn't see the fracture splitting us apart. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, my voice tight, forcing a smile as she hugged me, her warmth a fleeting anchor against the storm within. Judith appeared, her eyes narrowing like a hawk's. "Connie, go play upstairs," she said, her tone sharp, cutting through the room. Connie scampered off, her footsteps fading, and Judith faced me, her smile thin as a blade. "You're up early, Margaret. Everything all right?" Her question was a trap, her gaze probing for cracks, her voice smooth but cold. I nodded, clutching the receipt, my throat too tight for words. "Just tidying up," I said. But her eyes lingered cold and calculating, as if measuring my resolve against her plans. She left, and I sank onto the couch, the receipt crumpling in my hand, its paper fragile as my trust. Their plan was forming lawyers' documents, a way to strip me of Harold's legacy. My chest felt hollow, the betrayal sinking deeper, a wound that bled silently. The dining room was dim, the chandelier casting jagged shadows across the oak table, where we sat for dinner, the air thick with unspoken truths. I'm Margaret, 62, and the room felt like it was holding its breath, the silence heavy as stone. Raymond carved the roast, his knife steady, the blade glinting under the light, while Judith passed potatoes. Her smile taut, her movements precise. Connie chattered about school, her voice a fragile light weaving through the tension. I gripped the will in my lap, its weight grounding me a shield against the storm I knew was coming. I couldn't stay silent. Their betrayal had festered too long a wound I had to face. I set my fork down, the clink sharp in the quiet, cutting through Connie's laughter. "Raymond, Judith." I said, my voice low but firm, steady despite my racing heart. "I heard you yesterday, in the living room, talking about the will." The room froze, the air tightening. Connie's fork hovered, her eyes confused, searching mine. Judith's gaze sharpened, a flash of steel, but Raymond paled, his knife still, his breath caught. "What are you talking about, Mum?" he said. His voice too smooth, practiced like he'd anticipated this moment and dreaded it. "Don't I?" said, my heart pounding, the words heavy in my throat. "I heard you. Judith saying I don't need it all, you agreeing, planning to take what Harold left." My voice trembled, but held each word, a stone rippling still water. Judith's laugh was sharp, forced, cutting through the silence. "You must have misheard, Margaret. We'd never do that." Her eyes darted to Raymond, betraying her lie. A flicker of panic beneath her calm. They were caught, and they knew it, their plan exposed in the dim light. I pulled the will from my lap, its pages crisp, their edges catching the chandelier's glow. "Harold wrote this to keep us fair," I said, my voice shaking but growing stronger, fueled by his memory. "He wanted us to share, to stay a family." I read his words aloud, his script careful, etched with love. "To my wife Margaret, the house and half our savings to ensure her security." My throat tightened, his faith a lifeline across the years. Raymond stared at the table, his hands still, his silence louder than words. "Gordon." My brother-in-law cleared his throat, his chair creaking as he shifted his face, uneasy. "Let's not jump to conclusions, Margaret," he said. His voice cautious, but his eyes flickered to Raymond, doubt clear in their depths. He'd warned Harold about Raymond's recklessness years ago over late-night coffee in this very house, his voice low with worry. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "It's no misunderstanding, Gordon. I heard them planning to challenge me to take it all." My voice held. but my hands trembled, the will a shield against their betrayal, its pages heavy with Harold's trust. Connie's voice broke through, small and scared. Why's everyone mad? My heart cracked her innocence, a wound I couldn't soothe. I'm not mad, sweetheart, I said, softening for her, my voice gentle despite the fire within. Just talking. Judith's jaw tightened, her napkin gripped tight, her knuckles white. You're making a scene, Margaret. This isn't the time. Her words were ice, but fire rose in me, a heat I hadn't felt in years. It's exactly the time, I said, standing the will, trembling in my hands, its pages a testament to Harold's love. Harold trusted me to protect this family, and I will. Judith stood her chair, scraping the floor. Her face flushed with anger, the sound jarring in the dining room's heavy air. I'm Margaret, 62, and the room shrank, walls closing as her words struck like blows. You're twisting this, Margaret, she snapped, her voice slicing through, sharp and unyielding. We're not stealing. We're protecting Connie's future. You're too old to manage that money alone. Her accusation burned, stripping me bare before everyone my age, a weapon in her hands. Connie's eyes widened, her small hands clutching her glass, her confusion a mirror to my pain. Raymond's head snapped up, his voice low but urgent. Judith, stop. But she didn't. Leaning forward, her words venomous, each one a calculated cut. You've been grieving, Margaret. Unstable. We're just thinking of what's best. Unstable. The word seared a public wound. My grief for Harold twisted into a flaw, my strength dismissed. My hands shook, the will slipping to the table, its pages fluttering like a wounded bird, their edges catching the dim light. I wanted to scream, to say I'd carried this family through every storm, but my voice caught, silenced by the weight of her attack. I saw Harold's face, his last hospital days, his eyes tired but clear, whispering, "Protect our home, Margaret." I'd failed him, letting this moment arrive, the family he loved fracturing before me. Gordon shifted, muttering, "Let's calm down," his words. Faint against the storm, his face etched with discomfort. Raymond's eyes met mine, guilt flickering, then fading. His shoulders slumping. "Mum, we're in debt," he said. Barely audible, his voice cracking under the weight. "We need the money. It's not personal." Not personal. My heart shattered, the pieces grinding under his confession. A truth that cut deeper than any lie. Debt. Greed. Not for Connie, but their escape from failure. I remembered Raymond, newly married, standing in this house, promising Harold he'd care for me. His eyes earnest, his hand firm in his father's. Now those eyes looked away, hollow, drained of that promise. Judith smirked my silence, her victory, her confidence, a blade twisting deeper. "We'll talk to a lawyer if we have to," she said, her voice cold. Final, the threat landing like a stone. Connie's voice trembled, small and scared. "Are you fighting because of Grandpa?" My throat closed her innocence. A deeper cut, a wound I couldn't shield her from. I couldn't answer the room's spinning tears, stinging as the chandelier's light blurred. My family's love unraveled every sacrifice, nights awake debts forgiven worthless now. My chest heaved, the truth choking me. My son chose his needs over me, and there was no return. The dining room's silence lingered like smoke after Judith's words, her lawyer threat echoing in my ears. I'm Margaret, 62. And I stood there, the will crumpled on the table, my heart raw from Raymond's confession. But something shifted, a spark, beneath the ash of betrayal. I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. I excused myself, leaving the untouched roast and Connie's worried eyes, the air thick with their guilt. The next morning I drove to Alan's office, a small brick building downtown. Its faded wallpaper oddly comforting, the scent of old books grounding me. Alan, Harold's friend and our lawyer, greeted me with a warm handshake. His desk cluttered with legal pads, a coffee mug ringed with stains. I slid the will across my voice firm, though my hands trembled slightly. I need to make sure this is ironclad, I said. Raymond and Judith are planning to challenge it. Alan's brow furrowed, his fingers flipping through the pages, their edges worn from Harold's careful hands. Harold was clear, Margaret. This protects you. We can add safeguards. I pulled the locket from my neck. Its silver cool, a gift from our 10th anniversary. Its weight a reminder of Harold's strength, urging me forward. What can we do? I asked, my voice steady now, fueled by resolve. Alan outlined a trust for Connie's education, a clause to block challenges. His calm voice a lifeline. I saw us years ago facing a lean year, selling our car to pay bills. Harold's hand squeezing mine, his eyes promising we'd survive. I'd been strong then. I could be now. Alan paused, leaning back his chair, creaking. Harold said you were the backbone, Margaret. Told me over poker you'd outlast us all. I smiled faintly, the locket heavy in my palm, its engraving worn but clear. I told him to draft the trust lock. The house and savings in my name. My voice unwavering despite the guilt tugging at me. Raymond was my son, but he'd forced my hand. I thought of confronting him alone, away from Judith's sharpness, to make him see me as his mother, not a barrier. I remembered a winter evening, Harold teaching me to balance our checkbook, his patience steadying me through numbers that never added up. His faith in me was a fire now burning away doubt. The locket glinted in the morning light, a symbol of promises we'd kept. I wasn't done fighting for them, for the family Harold envisioned, and I'd start by securing what he left behind. I left Alan's office, the trust papers promised by tomorrow, and drove home, the locket warm against my chest, its chain catching the sunlight. I'm Margaret, 62, and the Ohio streets blurred, each a thread of the life Harold and I wove, the maples along the road, shedding early leaves. The house appeared, its sagging porch, a testament to years of love and wear, the paint peeling like old skin. Inside, the air was still, Raymond and Judith, out the silence, both a relief and a weight. I headed to the kitchen, needing to face my son, alone to reclaim what I'd lost in their scheming. I sat at the table, its surface scarred from decades of meals, a battleground for truth now. I pulled the fishing photo from the drawer. Raymond's young smile, a ghost of who he'd been. his eyes bright with a joy I hadn't seen in years. I set it on the table, a silent question, its edges curling slightly from time. When he walked in that evening, shoulders hunched, his coat still damp from an afternoon drizzle, I gestured to the chair. "Raymond?" I said, my voice steady. "We need to talk about the will." He sat, eyes flickering to the photo, then away, his fingers restless. "Mom." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said, his voice low, cracking slightly, but it felt rehearsed like a line practiced in the dark. I raised a hand, stopping him. "You plan to take what Harold left me," I said, calm, but unyielding my words, cutting through the quiet. "But I'm not letting that happen. The will stands. The house, the savings, Connie's future, it's what your father wanted." His jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the table, the scars under his fingers a map of our past. Esther's knock broke the quiet. Her arms full of cookies, their warm scent drifting in as she set them on the counter. Her eyes, kind but curious, lingered on us. "Thought you could use these," she said, her voice soft. A neighbor's care grounding me. I thanked her and she left, her footsteps fading into the evening. Raymond stared at the photo, his voice barely above a whisper. "I remember that day with Dad. We're drowning, Mom." His honesty cracked me, but I held firm, the locket's weight steadying me. "I know you're struggling," I said, sliding the photo to him. "Keep this, remember who you were. But I'm not the enemy." I stood, hands steady, and walked to the sink, the cookie's warmth filling the air, a contrast to the chill between us. I remembered a summer picnic, Raymond, a toddler clinging to me as ants marched across our blanket. His laughter bright as the sun. I'd protected him then, but now I protected myself. My resolve as firm as the table's worn wood. Raymond stayed silent, the photo in his hands, his eyes distant. I turned, meeting his gaze unwavering. A mother reclaiming her ground. The room holding its breath as I stood taller than I had in years. Weeks passed and the house felt quieter. A stillness settling like dust. I'm Margaret, 62, and Raymond and Judith's absence now at a motel nearby left the air lighter but heavy with loss. Alan called that morning, his voice steady through the phone's crackle. "The trust is set, Margaret. Connie's education fund is secure, the house yours, no contest." I exhaled relief, mingling with a dull ache, the victory bittersweet. I'd honored Harold's wishes, but the fracture with my son was a shadow in every room, the silence louder than their voices had been. I sat on the porch, the late summer air warm, the lawn wild with clover and dandelions, a chaos Harold would have tamed. Alan's letter arrived, its pages confirming the legal steps, their weight final. I tucked it into a box with Harold's things beside a journal I'd found, its leather cover soft worn from his hands, the spine cracked from use. An entry from last year read, "Connie's college, our gift to her future." My throat tightened, his dream safe, but the rift with Raymond loomed a shadow over my triumph. I saw him as a boy running through this yard, Harold chasing him with a hose, their laughter echoing. That joy felt distant now, a memory I couldn't reclaim. I drove to Connie's school, needing her light to ground me. Karen, her teacher, met me outside, her smile, warm, her hair catching the sunlight. Connie's thriving, she said, showing me a math test with a bright red A, the paper crisp in her hands. She talks about you constantly. My heart lifted, but Raymond's absence pressed harder, a weight I carried silently. I'd secured Connie's future, a piece of Harold's legacy, but it built a wall between me and my son. Karen handed me Connie's drawing, a sun over a house, its colours vivid, a child's hope. I clutched it, her innocence a fragile anchor in my storm. Back home, the kitchen table was bare without the fishing photo. I wondered if Raymond kept it, if it stirred him, or if it lay forgotten in their motel room. The phone rang, and I hesitated, expecting Lois. It was Gordon, his voice cautious, measured. "Raymond's been asking about you," he said. "He's sorry, but not ready to talk." I nodded, though he couldn't see the words, sinking like stones, heavy and cold. Sorry, but not enough. I opened Harold's journal, a new page. Margaret's strength keeps us grounded. I traced the words, my fingers lingering, the ink faded but clear. I'd done what he asked, but the victory felt empty. The family I fought for scattered the silence, a weight no words could lift. I closed Harold's journal, its pages heavy with his hopes, and stood in the kitchen, evening shadows stretching long across the linoleum. I'm Margaret, 62, and the house felt alien, as if my stand had reshaped its walls, the air thick with the residue of choices made. Raymond called that afternoon, his voice hesitant through the phone's static. "Mum, can I come by?" he asked. No mention of Judith. His words tentative. I agreed, my heart torn between hope and caution. The kitchen clock ticking like a metronome as I waited, unsure what he'd bring to this fractured space. He arrived alone, his coat damp from a light rain. The collar turned up, his eyes avoiding mine as he stepped inside the door, creaking softly. The living room felt too stiff, too formal, so we sat at the kitchen table, its surface a map of our past, scarred from years of shared meals. "I'm sorry," he said, hands fidgeting, fingers twisting a loose thread on his sleeve. No photo in sight. We were desperate. "I didn't want to hurt you." His voice cracked, but it felt rehearsed, a line practiced in the motel's dim light. His eyes shadowed with guilt. I nodded, my face still chest aching with the weight of his words. "I fought for what your father wanted, Raymond," I said, quiet but firm, my voice steady despite the tremor within. "For Connie, for me, for us." He traced the table's edge where we'd shared Sunday dinners, his silence loud, a wall between us. I waited for more, a bridge across the gap, but he gave only quiet, his apology thin against the weight of his actions. I remembered a winter night, Raymond, a teen, sneaking out Harold's sigh as we waited up the porch light burning. I'd believed in him then, but now I guarded my heart, my trust worn thin. Beverly stopped by her arms full of gardening tools, her boots muddy from her own yard. "Let's plant something in Harold's flower bed," she said, her smile gentle but firm, her eyes seeing more than I said. We worked soil cool under my hands. Her talk of roses, a soft distraction, the scent of earth grounding me. Raymond's half-hearted sorry lingered, but I dug deeper, the earth yielding my heart not. Beverly glanced at me, eyes knowing. "You did what you had to," she said, her voice low, and I nodded the words. Cold comfort against the rift I'd widened by standing my ground. Raymond left without another word. His footsteps fading in the rain, the sound swallowed by the evening's hush. I stood in the yard, the rosebush small, but rooted its thorns, a quiet vow of resilience. I'd secured Connie's future, but the cost was my son. A stranger now, his apology too weak to mend what broke. The rain blurred the world, falling heavier, and I felt hollow, my choice's victory swallowed by the quiet of a family. I could no longer reach the rosebush, standing alone in the fading light. Sunday morning light spilled through the kitchen window, soft and golden, warming the tiles under my bare feet. I'm Margaret, 62, and the house felt lighter, as if it had exhaled some of its grief, the air less heavy with loss. I sat with Connie, her crayons scattered across the table, her small hands sketching a tree for a school project, its branches sprawling in bright green. Her chatter about leaves and roots was a quiet music pulling me from the shadow of Raymond's visit. Her joy a balm to my weary heart. I smiled, guiding her pencil, finding solace in her world, untouched by the fractures I carried. I reached for a mug. Harold's favorite, its handle chipped but warm in my hand, the ceramic smooth from years of use. Under a stack of napkins, I found a recipe card. Its edges yellowed, Harold's handwriting looping across it. His pancake recipe, our Sunday ritual etched in ink. My heart stirred a gentle ache, not pain, but a soft memory. I showed it to Connie, her eyes lighting up. "Let's make these," I said, my voice soft. Steady the words, a small act of reclaiming joy. We mixed batter, the kitchen filling with the scent of vanilla and flour, the air warm with possibility. Connie giggled, her spoon clinking against the bowl, and I saw Harold in her smile, his warmth alive in her. I remembered a Sunday morning, him dancing to the radio flower, dusting his shirt, pulling me into a clumsy twirl. His laughter bright as the sunlight streaming in. That joy, once sharp with loss, was a quiet glow now. A thread tying me to him without breaking me. I stirred the batter, my hands steady, the rhythm grounding me in the present. Connie hummed her drawing forgotten, and I let the moment hold me, the hurt of Raymond's betrayal. Judith's threats quieter now, like a storm past. "Grandma, do you think Grandpa liked pancakes best?" she asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. I laughed, the sound surprising me light in my chest. "He loved them because we made them together." I said, my hand on hers, her warmth a reminder of what endured. The batter sizzled on the griddle, the sound anchoring me in this small act of care, a step away from anger toward a peace I hadn't thought possible. The pancakes sat stacked steam, curling in the morning light, as Connie ran to wash her hands. Her laughter fading down the hall. I'm Margaret, 62, and the kitchen's quiet wrapped me like a worn quilt, soft and familiar. The recipe card lay on the counter, Harold's handwriting, a quiet presence, and I pulled a notebook from the drawer, its pages blank mine to fill. I began a letter to Raymond, not to send, but to unburden my heart, each word. A step toward release, a way to let go without losing myself. My pen moved slowly, ink tracing nights I'd stayed up for him, worrying over fevers, the pride of his first job, the ache of his distance now. I forgave him not for him, but for me to free myself from his choices, the weight of his betrayal lifting slightly. The words flowed like a river, finding its path steady and sure. I remembered Harold forgiving his brother after a bitter fight, his voice calm in the lamplight. Holding on hurts more than letting go. His wisdom guided me now, a beacon through my own storm, illuminating a path forward. The phone rang, Lois's voice warm, but tinged with her own struggles, her words crackling across the miles. "Kids can break your heart, Margaret," she said. Speaking of her son, her voice heavy with shared pain. "But you're stronger than this." I nodded, though she couldn't see her words. A mirror to my resolve steadying me. We spoke of our childhood losses we'd survived, her voice knitting us closer. The scent of her old letters in my mind, their paper crisp with memory. My loneliness softened her presence, a reminder I wasn't alone in this ache. I walked to my bedroom, notebook in hand, and hung the fishing photo, its frame simple but steady, the glass catching the morning light. It wasn't a shrine to loss, but a nod to love that could be again in a new way. I looked at Raymond's young smile, frozen in time, and felt no anger, only a quiet acceptance. The hurt, a shadow that no longer ruled me. I returned to the kitchen, the pancakes cold and sat in the sunlight. The clock ticking softly, its rhythm a gentle pulse. I breathed slow and deep, the letter folded in my pocket. Its words a silent release, carrying me toward a new dawn. Months later, I stood in the backyard, the rose bush a burst of red against the autumn chill, its petals vivid in the crisp air. I'm Margaret, 62, and the world felt new. The house softer, its walls holding memories. I chose to keep their edges worn, but warm. I visited Harold's grave that morning, a quiet hill under an oak, its leaves rustling softly, and spoke to him, my voice steady, the grass cool beneath my knees. I kept our promise. I said the words simple but true. His presence a gentle echo in the breeze, a whisper of the life we'd shared. I'd started walking the neighborhood at dawn. Maples turning gold, their leaves drifting like quiet promises. The streets were silent but alive, the air sharp with morning dew, and those steps gave me space to think, to let the hurt settle into something I could carry lighter now. Passing Esther's house, her porch light always on, I'd see her wave, sometimes join me, her stories of loss weaving us closer. She'd lost a sister young, her voice soft as she shared over coffee, her hands wrinkled but steady, and I found comfort in our shared scars, a community I'd overlooked in my grief. At home, I sorted Harold's things, not to erase him, but to hold what mattered, each item a piece of our story. In his closet, I found a wooden box unopened until now, its hinges stiff with age. Inside was a watch. Its face scratched the one he wore when we met at a diner, his shy smile catching me off guard. The jukebox playing a tune I'd forgotten. I wound it the tick, a pulse of our past, and set it on my nightstand. Its faint sound, a reminder that time moved forward, and so could I. Connie visited often, her school projects filling the kitchen with colour, her laughter a melody in the quiet. We painted one afternoon, smearing blue across a canvas, her giggles bright as the sunlight streaming in. She didn't ask about her parents, and I didn't push, letting her joy be enough a gift in the present. I'd learned to live in these moments, small but steady, building a life beyond Raymond's choices. The trust for her future was secure. A piece of Harold's love, she'd carry my gift to her, rooted in his dreams. Beverly joined me for coffee, her presence a quiet strength, her mug steaming beside mine. "You're different now," she said. Her eyes kind, seeing the change I felt, stronger somehow. I smiled, stirring my cup, the steam rising like a prayer. She was right. The pain hadn't vanished, but it didn't rule me. I'd fought for what was mine, found a strength I'd forgotten, the rosebush swaying in the backyard, its red a beacon of resilience. I breathed slow and deep, the world steady under my feet, my heart lighter in the autumn light. The days grew shorter, the autumn air sharper, but I found warmth in small routines, a rhythm that felt like home. I'm Margaret, 62, and I started baking again, simple loaves of bread, the kneading a quiet dance that steadied my hands, the dough soft under my fingers. The kitchen smelled of yeast and flour, a new scent for a house that had held too much sorrow, the air warm with possibility. I'd leave a loaf on Esther's porch, her grateful smile a stitch in my days, her doorstep worn from years of her own quiet resilience. I was rebuilding not just a home, but a life that felt mine, shaped by my own hands, steady and sure. One evening I sat by the window, a quilt across my lap, its patches sewn by my mother years ago, watching streetlights flicker on their glow, soft against the dusk. I thought of Harold, not with ache, but with gratitude that settled deep, a warmth in my bones. He'd taught me resilience, not through words, but through years of standing together. His hand steady in mine through every storm. I remembered a night we walked this street, his arm around me, planning a trip. We never took his voice low, with dreams of quiet years. That dream was gone, but I was here, choosing to live my steps surer, now grounded in the present. I began volunteering at Connie's school, reading to her class. Their eager faces a reminder of what endures, their voices bright with questions. One day a letter came from Raymond, brief but handwritten, the paper creased from his grip. "I'm trying, Mom." It said no promises, just effort, his handwriting shaky, but his own. I folded it open to time. Not miracles, my heart steady. Judith stayed distant, but I let her go. Her choices no longer mine to carry. I'd learned to hold my own heart first, to build from what remained a life rooted in my own strength. The lesson came slowly, like dawn over the horizon, soft but unyielding. Betrayal doesn't define us. It's what we build afterward that does. I'd lost a piece of my son, but I'd found my own power, a quiet strength to choose love over resentment, to forgive without forgetting. Life's fractures don't heal perfectly, but they become part of a new whole one. We shape ourselves with hands worn but steady. I stood in the backyard, the rosebush blooming its red, a quiet fire, and felt rooted, my heart lighter, ready for whatever came next. What moment in your life taught you to let go and still stand tall? Share your story below. I'd love to hear it. If this journey resonated, please like and subscribe to join me in finding light through life's shadows. Share it with someone who needs it, someone carrying their own quiet strength. Thank you for listening, and may you find peace in your own story wherever it leads.